Hi, Nicole. Welcome to October 7th. Thank you so much for being here. Would you like to introduce yourself in case someone doesn't know who you are? I doubt it, but go ahead.
Oh, sure. I'm Nicole Lampert. I'm a journalist. I live in London. I'm British. My for most of my career, I was a showbiz writer, um, in arts and entertainment. I started writing about anti-Semitism in Britain in what we know as the Corbyn era in this country, when Labour had a leader who was explicitly anti-Zionist and anti-Semitism started to rise. And since October 7, it's writing about anti-Semitism, writing about Israel has become pretty much my full-time job, although I keep my hand in showbiz. But that's mainly what I do. I'm commentate for many of the newspapers. I unravel stories of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in organizations, and I go on TV and radio and talk about what's going on in this country. And there's always something. I kept thinking that it might end, but it doesn't appear to have.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything that you do, first of all. We're all so grateful, and you've been such a great model for many of us to the work that we do. And what, for example, just this last week, what was like the main three things that were on your table?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Obviously, it's been a quite even in the kind of post October 7 world of anti-Semitism, it's been quite a week as we've had in the space of 7 days, three different Jewish buildings have arson attacks on them. There have been arrests, so I have to be slightly cautious in what I say because of our laws. But people have been arrested and they believe that it's in connection with Iran and that Iran is maybe hiring young people over the internet, just young criminals, and getting them to do these arson attacks. And it has to be said that they are not very professionally done, which in some ways is a blessing, because if they were being done more professionally, then perhaps they would have caused more damage. But certainly they've caused fear and anger in the Jewish community, and a silence from the anti-racist left, as per usual. I've also been writing a couple of pieces for the Telegraph that I'm hoping will go in soon. One is about specifically looking at Islamist extremism in this country, Islamist anti-Semitism, and the fact that no one is willing to tackle it, including leaders of mosques and places like that. And then I've also been looking at Restore, which is the far right and the rise of the far right in this country. It's still quite a small still a kind of fringe minority, but growing in power and uh, just as anti-Semitic, really, in slightly different ways, but in some ways, what they have to say about Jews connect, certainly in terms of Jewish power. So it's been another busy week in the world of anti-Semitism in England.
Yeah, it's horrible. There's so much going on. I don't even know where to start, but we did chat a little bit before when we said that we are going to go through politics, media, and culture. So this conversation is going to end with the Eurovision, I promise you. But let's start with what's happening with the Green Party.
Yeah, I should have said that. Something else I wrote about last week is the Greens. I went to my local husting. So for those of you who aren't British, we have local elections coming up. So these are for the people that are running our councils and organizations that, well, the councils, they do things like they run the schools, they run the bins, they look after our pavements. And if you're unwell, or if you perhaps live in council housing, then you probably encounter them more than many others. So we have local elections, and in certain areas, including where I live, it looks like the Green Party is going to come from nowhere or almost nowhere and maybe take control. And they are concerning on several levels. The first is that many of them are inexperienced. So they're going to be taking over councils with multi-million pound budgets with absolutely no experience, but just this desire to bring joy, so they say, into the world. And I've been looking also at the many anti-Semites that are in the Green Party. And of course, we can talk about anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, but quite a lot of them are just pure anti-Semites. Um, for example, we talked about the arson attacks, but the one a few weeks ago was on 4 ambulances, Hatzola ambulances, and there were quite a lot of just people saying this is a false flag. And we've seen that again over the last few days, the idea that somehow Israel or Mossad or Jewish people um, are somehow doing this to ourselves
Yeah,
for some reason to get sympathy, because they cannot believe, and I don't know why they cannot believe that anyone would do this to us, even though the rhetoric is so ramped up.
yeah.
But anyway, we
But
are
this,
seeing, yeah, I was going to say, we are seeing, so I talked a little bit about Labour anti-Semitism, which we saw in the Corbyn era. And at that point, there were enough people in his party so that when there were people that were caught saying anti-Semitic stuff, then normally they would at least pledge to investigate and maybe throw out that person. Not always, but with the Greens, we have a huge amount of would-be councillors that have been found to have expressed anti-Semitism, and nothing is happening apart from they are being told to delete those particular messages. So we're now seeing a kind of mainstreaming of anti-Semitism. It's not enough to have you thrown out of a political party. So I went to my own local hustings, which was at the synagogue where I live, and we didn't know there was going to be a Green candidate until the last minute. There'd been debate about whether to have one. And I started off the questioning towards her. She is Jewish, but quite quickly came out with the fact that she thought that Israel was an apartheid state, which is something that the Greens have already passed. She said she would always call out anti-Semitism. She wouldn't answer the question about whether she was a Zionist or not. And then when someone shouted, "Shame on you," she said that it was anti-Semitic of them to chase her down for her opinions.
wow. So this is something that we see globally, right? First of all, the fact that city councils, city hall are a front. This is why we have a project in the community called Protect Your City, where we talk with teams that work in different cities because we're feeling that the page on the BDS movement website that says that going to local governance as a system of turning the system to flipping the system one city at a time, it feels like it's working for them. They've been doing it everywhere in the USA, in the UK, in Europe, and it's working. They're taking over the world one city at a time. It does feel like that. And so I really, like, this is so important that you've taken notice of that because this is the first stage. Most people don't notice it because it's a council. It's kind of like goes under the radar of everyone. It's not something in the government. So this is like such an important stage that you're in the front of that, of what's happening in city councils, because this is the main front where all of us are going to feel the change, how they infiltrate city halls and take over. And the second thing is the use that they do with anti-Zionist Jews or Israelis. They use them as a shield. They put them in the front, right? And they say, you can't attack us because we have a Jewish person standing in front of us.
Yeah.
So, what would you say? And this is very puzzling for us morally because we're good people. We don't want to attack our brothers and sisters, and we're trained as a community to really take people for who they are and not for what their opinions are, because it's the end of the world for us if we start fighting with each other, right? So we can't go after them, and no one else can because they're Jewish, and then that would be anti-Semite to do so. So what do you think we can do about people like her? Because they are like the most
Yeah,
dangerous
well,
for
so
us.
obviously this is very relevant for the Greens, who are led by the anti-Zionist Zach Polanski, and I've written about him and the fact that his most of his family don't speak to him anymore. He has family in Israel, and actually, for most of his upbringing, he was a Zionist Jew, and even when he joined the Greens, he tried to fight the anti-Zionism in the Green Party. He tried to get the IRA definition passed, and he even kind of fought with a Muslim man who he felt was singling out Israel too much. And now crossover post October 7 world, and it's really interesting. The man that he was attacking is now attacking the Greens for being filled with Islamists. And the interesting thing about the Greens, and I'm sure it's probably the same, similar with quite a few other parties, and obviously we saw it originally in Iran, is you've got the far left, which have been kind of imbibed Soviet style anti-Zionism, and you've got Islamists, and they've joined together. And with the Green, it is fascinating to see if they are going to last the course, because you've got very conservative Muslims in with LGBTQ whatever plus plus plus. So, and the other week there was an anti-racism demonstration, of course, filled with pro-Palestinians, dancing, and he was on stage and he was dancing with a man in a gimp outfit, so kind of very sexualized. And people were like, "How? What are the Muslims going to think of that?" Or the fact that, for example, another Green policy is to legalize drugs, to legalize prostitution. They have some quite mad desires, and so of course, and they are using, yeah, they're using Zach as a front. He is a useful idiot, and personally, I think we should attack him, and I did attack him because I wrote about his family not speaking to him, and he took that very personally. He then tweeted about me, or the story, or the paper that I'd written it for 32 times in 48 hours. I counted up the tweets. So I picked my son up from the station. He just was picking, I was picking him up from university. I'm like, I'm having a bit of a day. Zach Polanski can't stop tweeting about me. And he was like, oh my God, all my flatmates love the Greens. They think he's amazing. I was like, oh, you should tell them. He's like, no, I don't think so, because I think they'll hate you. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, how do we respond to the fact that these anti-Zionists? I think we just point out the fact that in almost every anti-Semitic movement in history, it's they require the help of the turncoat Jew, and you can start that with with the blood libel and the start of that, which started in this country. And part of that was, there was a Jew who had been baptized as a Christian, and he said, this is what the Jews do. They want to kill your children and use the blood for their Passover matzah. And that's what started off the blood libel, which still haunts all of us around the world to this day. The idea that we actually want to kill babies or enjoy killing babies. So, and then you've got, for example, in the Bible, you've got Paul, stroke Saul, who also used the fact that he was Jewish to attack fellow Jews. So I think it's important that we explain to people that, yes, this is a Jewish person, and more than anything else, and he knows, right, he knows the difference between right and wrong. He's got family in Israel. I don't think he wants the state of Israel destroyed, but he is, so the Greens wanted to pass a Zionism is racism motion, which would have made them officially the most anti-Semitic party in the country. But because of the kind of the process, it was very low down the agenda, and all day people were trying to move it back and forth on the agenda. But basically, it didn't get read, but it will be read at their next one. But I think he knows that is wrong, to call for the destruction of the state of Israel, which the motion also calls for. But he's not saying that, and that is because he's the kind of definition of a useful idiot. But he's not an idiot. He's just behaving as their useful idiot. So I think we need to explain that there have always been Jews that go against other Jews, and they do that for attention. And it's a bit like the minstrels, as one person that I interviewed for a piece on feminism and how that was breaking up over anti-Zionism said that to me. I'm not your minstrel. I'm not going to dance for you, Jew, type thing. So, we are in a world where the only acceptable Jews in some places are those who denounce Zionism and denounce their other Jews. And we have to say no. We have to have a strong fight against that. I just see that Leslie has posted, I hope you don't mind me saying, but capo. Personally, I don't think we should use the Nazi words. I think we need to come up with other words. I think the capos or Sonderkommandos or someone else described him to me as, I think they belong to a certain time when people literally had a gun to their head. Zach Polanski does not have a gun to his head. He's doing this because his very complicated family background means he's someone who's desperate for love, which he's getting. So I think probably what we need to do is come up with another word for
Yeah,
it.
and so as we said in the discussion that we had in one of the groups about those anti-Zionists, we said we're not their shrinks. We're not supposed to understand their entire psychological background. The fact is that they're creating a lot of damage. And we as a community have this problem everywhere because they're taking seats that belong to people and resources that's supposed to protect us. Like we have this problem in Canada where the city wants to hear what the Jewish community is saying. Suddenly they're hearing from Naomi Klein. No. Or we have this
Yeah.
problem in Berlin where the city, I don't know, wants to protect Israel, but they can't because the person speaking against it is Israeli, so they're lost at words. So what can we do as a community to be able to kind of like brand kosher, not kosher people, so people from outside the community would know who they can speak with? That actually means you just spoke to 99% of the Jewish people and not to the 1% that's been misbehaving.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a community, we fall out with each other way too much. And I think that we also have a lot of egos. Everyone who thinks that they should be the voice. In Britain, we do have the Board of Deputies, which is broadly seen as the kind of representative of the Jewish community because there are people from every different one of the communities, every synagogue are invited to be on the board. So I think that helps that there is a kind of large representative committee. Certainly, we have a Labour government that at the moment the Board of Deputies is led by a former Labour councillor, and I think that probably helps. But yeah, we've had people that think the Board of Deputies is too left wing, so they've formed their own organisation. We have people that think that it's not right wing enough, or yeah, it's too right wing. So then they are members of other organizations. But I think we need to stop fighting amongst ourselves and start speaking with one voice to drown out the small tokenized Jewish community. And we can look at that now. Just, the fact is that whatever you think of Israel, the fact that synagogues are now being attacked in both England and across Europe,
Yeah.
like surely you would think the most anti-racist person would see that that's unacceptable. The fact is that the anti-racists are being silent, but we could do with even some of these turncoat Jews to speak up about it and say this is disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we had the Berlin Jewish person commenting on a post of someone saying like, "Oh, so sorry to say, but this person fell in Lebanon or in Gaza or something like that," and he commented like really rudely about like God's reading or something like that. Another Zion Nazi was like, "Dude, you have family in Israel. What are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
how bad
it's
of attention do you want from these people? It's horrible."
Yeah, I mean,
So
I think the psychology of them is really fascinating because often they are people that have had disgruntled home lives, and for me, they are sad people who are desperate for attention.
yeah,
And I think that it's also worth pointing out that they're traitors to their community, and they're seen as such as well. It's not that people don't see that, and also, and we definitely saw it with the Corbyn Labour Party. Um, his name's escaped me. Someone might have it. The momentum guy, but the person who really helped get John Landsman, who helped get people behind Jeremy Corbyn and basically help create this takeover of the Labour Party to get people voting for him. He was Jewish and possibly a proud Jew, but he did dare to call out some of the anti-Semitism, and for that he had so much anti-Semitism. I think it possibly it opened his eyes. I think Zach Polanski is enjoying the moment too much at the moment to have his eyes open, but it will happen eventually. They will come for him.
yeah, sooner or later. It's like in Iran, they hang the leftists that helped them rise to power first. So we know how this
Exactly.
story ends.
Yeah.
We've all read this story a few times already. So this morning I got the great news that Kanye won't be coming to my city in the south of France. And I have UK to thank for. Because I think if UK hasn't stopped him first, he would
Mm.
have been admitted here as well. And you kind of like, I don't know how you made it, but like the fact that you got him banned from the UK is kind of like helped a lot of communities throughout Europe where he intended to go. So, what's going on in Britain culture? Because we had Kanye and we had Roger Waters and we had Death to the IDF, and there's a lot. It seems it's kind of like a hub for like BDS cultural activity. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it has been really from very early days, and Roger Waters, he's the one that, whatever act it is, who says they're going to Israel, he's often the one writing the letters. So, in terms of really attacking music acts, that's coming from here. Obviously, Britain is a kind of hub of the music world, and we are also a hub of the BDS world. Um, so, I mean, what's happening here? Yes, we saw at Glastonbury last year Bob Vylan sing "Death, Death, the IDF," and he was the rap group was on the same stage that we were waiting for Kneecap to come on. So the space was already filled with Palestine flags. So you've got Kneecap, who are Irish, who um, who have found fame, as it were, because of course sucking it to the man is all about being pro-terrorist. Um, the very name kneecap, that is from an IRA punishment for thieves and robbers, where they are shot in the knees and making it impossible for them to walk, often to walk again. So they are people that glorify terrorism. So they're glorifying allegedly terrorists, Hamas and Hezbollah, although for whatever reason they were arrested and then it didn't happen, ran out of time or blah blah blah. And I think that a lot of the British authorities here are struggling with our very liberal concept of free speech and of not being dangerous for our minorities. And the CPS, who are the people that decide whether to push the prosecution forwards, they're the legal arm. So you have the police and then the CPS. The CPS are quite often halting these and not pushing it forward. So with Bob Vylan, the police did arrest. Well, they investigated. There wasn't much to be investigated really because he shouted out "Death, death to the IDF." And this was after he'd made a load of comments about his bald Zionist former manager, and how awful it is to work for them. So this was blatant anti-Semitism from the stage of one of the world's biggest music festivals, screened live on the BBC. And the police had a 6-month investigation and in the end decided not to pursue it. And that is because they couldn't find a law to get them for, even though for most people this would be incitement and racial aggression as well. But for whatever reason, and I think certainly there's a kind of a need for the CPS to change its rules, and quite a lot of people that I've spoken to about this say the laws are in place, that it's about how they are perceived, and the CPS might say, well, we're going to struggle to get that pushed through a jury or a solicitor, but basically the political will has to come from the top, and that's what's missing. And as it so happens, we have our prime minister. He used to head the CPS. He was the director of public prosecutions. So if anyone knows how to get laws properly looked at, it's him. And the fact is that he hasn't done that, or they haven't created new laws to stop anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. So that's one of the problems. But yeah, in terms of Kanye, I think people in this country know we're not doing enough to stop anti-Semitism. They don't know how to stop it. He was an interesting case because there is the free speech element, but then there is the fact that he's a pro-Nazi, and we don't know what he's going to say. So yes, he's apologised, but he was probably booked before he apologised. And the fact is, so the park that he was meant to play in is very near my house. It's my local council. Uh, the fact is that he was asked, and he was asked not to do one night, but to do 3 nights. And that should have never happened in the first place. So I think because we've had two people killed, um, and we've had in Manchester in October on Yom Kippur,
Mm,
and after Bondi, uh, and all of this other stuff going on, I think the government can see that there is a problem. And I think people in this country can see there is a problem. And in some ways, Kanye West was kind of easy pickings because this wasn't about Israel. This is about Jews. This is about Hitler.
mm,
And that's the other thing, of course, and it's the same in France. We fought the Nazis. So in some ways, it shouldn't have just ever been about the Jews. It should have just been about why are we having a Nazi, someone who is pro-Nazi. So, and then it becomes a kind of right-wing thing. But of
mm,
course, the problem with what happens is that he's cancelled, and then the attacks on the Jews start because we are all powerful and
yeah,
all of that.
yeah,
So I did explain to the leader of our local council that this should never happen in the first place, and that whatever happened, the Jews were going to lose in the end. Either he was going to play his music, as a neo-Nazi, or he was going to, or we were going to accused of shutting down a black man, which is what happened.
yeah, yeah. It's all horrible, but it's also at the same time a highly sophisticated plan on the side of the BDS because we know that they've been fighting us on the cultural front since forever because we've been kind of like the dear and dearest of the Eurovision, for example, and they have a campaign running against us since 2019, I think. They've done this, that, and the other, but the worst I think was Yuval Raphael last year, or Eden Golan even was the worst I think, because she literally it was just after October 7th. So we have this year coming up, and how does it look on the UK side of things?
Um, well, certainly not as bad as Spain, which I think is not going to screen the Eurovision at all,
Yeah.
or Ireland, which has walked out. We have the BDS movement again having tried to stop it. They are now trying to attack our Eurovision contestant. What's his name? I've written it down somewhere. Sam Battle. So he's now getting attacked. And I know that, for example, previous contestant, Ollie, I can't remember his surname, who was on 2 years ago, he was attacked massively, even though he was Mr. Pro-Palestine and signed the letters and all of that, simply for being on the same stage as an Israeli.
Mm.
And it's something that he, for many, like for some time afterwards, would still cry when talking about because he
Oh,
was so bullied. So
a
we're now really seeing
pro-Palestinian was bullied for participating in the Eurovision. I haven't heard that
exactly.
one. That's a good one.
Yeah, he was being bullied because just because these are often young artists. It's a huge place for them to show their talent.
Yeah,
It's one of the biggest audiences in the world of television.
yeah,
So of course they're going to do it, but these people are attacking them and threatening them with their careers. And anyone in the music industry or the entertainment industry, um, it all depends on popularity.
yeah,
And actually, what we found with the kind of BDS people here is that sometimes it doesn't need many people, but it just needs a prolonged campaign to get people being cancelled. So there was a band here, Oy Vavoy. They are British Jews. They had an Israeli singer, but she was a very pro-Palestine Israeli, that as left as you can get, more or less. She has a Palestinian boyfriend, goes on goes on the demonstrations against Israel, but simply because she's Israeli, they were cancelled, and the excuse was that the cover of her album had her naked collecting watermelons. She was at a watermelon farm, and it was about her kind of getting to one with nature. And they said that this was offensive to Palestinians who sometimes use a cut up watermelon as their signal. So, and for that reason, they were cancelled by two places. And I think having talked to them, the thing that they found hurt the worst was no one was helping to stand up for them. None of their fellow musicians. In contrast, with Kneecap, when a few places did also ban them because of their support for terrorists, there was a whole campaign about free speech and let's support them and
Yeah.
all of that. And in contrast, oy vey voy, there was nothing.
I love that story because it goes to show the thing that we try to say to everyone. Jewish, secular Jewish, a religious Jew, a secular Jew, anti-Zionist, Israeli, non-Israeli, go into a bar and the barman says, "We don't serve Jews." This is
Exactly.
the whole thing of it on. So we're gonna go to Q&A now, guys. Please put your tiny little, the yellow hand up so we could get to you by order. And we're gonna start with Norman. Go ahead, Norman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I have to ask this question that is on my mind a lot, actually. What is your view of reform? Because we hear a lot about them. They're with Tommy Robinson, and I've told people, the optics with Tommy Robinson and Jews are really bad. Couldn't be worse. But a lot of Jews follow Tommy Robinson. They go under the banner of being British or being patriotic, but there is still that problem that, as far as the media is concerned, they are all, including the 100,000 on that march for the UK, whatever march it was in London, they are all right wingers. And personally, I don't really go for that. But we're in an age of tactical voting. I think certainly where I live, basically to keep the Greens out, to keep Labour out, even. Political no man's land. What's your view of them?
Um, so I've done, as I said, I've done a tiny bit of investigation into the right here, and I think that a year or so ago, then the neo-Nazis were headed towards reform. But since Restore has set up, and also since like Nigel Farage said no to Tommy Robinson being a member of Reform, so Nigel Farage has pushed against that far right element. So they're now all gone to Restore. So, for example, the hustings I went to the other day, the Reform candidate was a religious Jew. And he said something like 30% of Reform's candidates are foreigners, basically. So I don't have the choice that you have because I live in a very left-wing area. So we actually, my council has no what we have only Labour, Lib Dem, and Green councillors, and I can't see that changing. Um, I would vote for anyone to keep the Greens out, apart from maybe Restore myself.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't ever call myself a Reform voter. I'm very much in the centre, but the centre has let all of us down. So both the Tories that came before this Labour, the Tories were in charge when the hate marches started. They didn't do enough to stop them. They started with the anti-Israel rhetoric from David Cameron, and so I don't have much faith in the centre, but that's where my politics are.
Yeah.
But where I am at the moment, because I live in the area that I live in, yeah, I'm going to try and vote tactically to keep out the Greens because they're the ones that worry the most.
Yeah, same here, same here. And I've
And we
voted
also,
Labour my entire life, and I will probably vote Conservative up here in North Norfolk this year. Yeah,
yeah. Same here
thank
in
you.
France. We have the Islamists on the left and the Nazis on the right.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, it's a sandwich situation. Who are we going to vote for?
Well, those are the extremes, and the fact is that the British people are sick of the centre, and a big part of it is immigration, and I think that's affecting all of us in Europe and America as well.
Yeah.
The problems of immigration and just all of us who were in the EU, and obviously Britain voted to leave, but there was a huge influx. There was more than 1 million people just from Poland alone. And then since then, there's been there's still been a huge influx of both legal and illegal immigration, and neither party has really tackled it well enough. They don't have an answer to it. So in some ways, it's not surprising. And obviously, as Jews, we're obviously you're pro some immigration. And if only our ancestors had been allowed, well, if only other people's ancestors had been allowed to leave, Nazi-occupied Germany to come to Britain, which they weren't allowed, or to go to the Mandate of Palestine, which they weren't allowed, then the Holocaust wouldn't have been as bad. So, that is our life as Jews, and I haven't put. I wanted to kind of write this in a piece, but that it didn't end up being that kind of piece. But the Hillel quote about if I am not for myself, who am I? If I'm not for others, also who am I? I can't remember what it was. If not now, when? But so sorry for my misquoting. But basically, we've got to be for us, and we've got to be for others. But us putting ourselves first is the first one.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Leslie. And Leslie, first of all, thank you for bringing Nicole to us today. This is such a great opportunity for all of us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead, Leslie.
I want to thank Nicole too for taking time out of her unbelievably busy schedule to come and be with us. So I don't know if you can answer this. Where do you think the UK is going to be in, say, 2 to 3 years from now?
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like I've always felt like, because as a centrist, I had quite a good weather vane in being able to predict how people are going to vote. But it feels so difficult. Our politics, I don't think we had a very volatile few years from the Brexit vote onwards, or even before that, when the country was really divided amongst itself. And then obviously the Brexit shenanigans went on for some time, and then there was COVID. And obviously this is happening in different degrees all over the world. But just it's so volatile. But I kind of feel that reform could do well, and it may be that at the next election it might be a kind of reform Tory pact. I'm not sure Labour would get into bed with the Greens, but maybe they would. But we're definitely seeing a realignment of our politics that probably hasn't been seen since the emergence of the Labour Party more than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And it feels like 2 years is a really long time, and we think back to where we were 2 years ago when the Tories were imploding, but still it felt that no one had any aptitude or love for Keir Starmer. I mean, it may be that by the end of this week, Keir Starmer will be gone, and that's how volatile things are. And I think that everyone's just sick of our political class because they keep letting us down. They let us down as Jews, but they let us down as Brits too. It's just it's unbelievable how bad they are.
Do you think there's going to be a wave of people from the Jewish community that's going to stand up and get elected because there's no one to vote for?
No.
Really?
Well, people will stand up as a Jew. There's no votes in it. There's not enough of us really. There are Jewish people in the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, as I mentioned, in the Reform, even in the Greens. So there are, but there's no. I can't. It's not like we will ever wield any political power. We're not like the Muslims who have. There's 4-5 million of them. There's 290,000 of us. So, I mean, we are seeing, we saw at the last election, the emergence of the Muslim vote, and that's what we're certainly going to be seeing more of, where people are voting on sectarian lines. And we're certainly seeing that with the Greens. It will be interesting to see as well whether the Greens are able to hold this bizarre alliance together of very far left politics and laissez-faire on, all of that, the kind of gay rights and free drugs and the conservative Islam, whether they're able to hold it together and whether that will explode or not as well. I'm hoping it will, obviously.
Okay, thank you so much, Leslie. Go ahead, Charlie. Charlie, you're muted.
Mute there, got it undone. Right, okay. First of all, before I tell you my question, Nicole, it's finally good to meet you in person. We've known each other on the social media for a long time, and I'm glad we've now got this opportunity to meet in person.
Not in person. We're not in
Well,
person.
obviously through a Zoom meeting. But
Yeah.
yeah, first of all, I wanted to thank you for helping me to become the most recognised non-Jewish autistic Zionist and ally of the Jewish people. I'm always dedicated to fighting for moral clarity and showing my gratitude to the Jewish people, for which the autistic community have well, although it's embarrassing they're not showing any gratitude or support to the Jewish people through Israel, I've been pretty much the most active and wildly open voice, standing up for what the Jewish people have done for autistic people and advanced neurodiversity. In fact, it was a Jew who invented the term neurodiversity. Which brings me to my question. What do you have to say about the way that anti-Israel activists have captivated the civil justice groups and turned them against Jews by dismissing the advancements in society that Jews have given them in Britain?
Well, yeah, so nice to meet you over Zoom. And I didn't know that the Jews had helped so much. I'm glad to hear. It does feel like we have a lot of autistic or neurodiverse people in our community.
Yes, you do.
So in terms of your answer, I think Jewish leftists are feeling extremely let down, that often they have devoted themselves to causes, anti-racism, pro-immigration, civil rights, and people have turned their back on them. Even just kind of anecdotally, a family friend who was herself, she'd suffered from depression and she'd found this group of friends and she marched with them for BLM, she marched with them for trans rights. And then this is 2021, and then there's a small skirmish between Israel and Hamas, and all her friends are posting it's all about the oil and just a load of conspiracy theories about Israel. And when she tries to push back, they simply block her. So I think it shows you that we are not loved by the people we try and help. But we shouldn't let that, or at least some of them, I guess we shouldn't let that stop us but doing what we believe is right, because we're not doing it to be loved, we're doing it because it's the right thing.
Yes, that's
And
true.
so yeah, it can feel like a betrayal, and I think probably a lot of very leftist Jews are feeling it particularly hurt. A lot of my friends that have devoted themselves to these causes, and I would say that for some of them this first became obvious to them around the Corbyn era. And for many others, it only became obvious after October 7, particularly people in the arts. And I think some of them are devastating that they've lost their entire friendship groups. And so that is making Jews turn more inwards to each other who can understand, which can be both difficult but also beautiful. I formed lots of amazing new friendships with people who I didn't have anything in common with. So I'm an optimist, and so I'm kind of feeling like, okay, so we've lost that, but we've won this. There's some beauty in it, in having and in realizing who your friends are, and still trying to forge something good out of that.
Right. Well, that's very touching. Thank you very much, Nicole. But I will say this to your Jewish friends who feel within those circles who have been left out or pushed. You don't need to be validated for your existence. Live for your own. You live with your own truth as your only motive, and be the best of yourself. I don't care if the autism community dismisses me for being a defender of the Jewish people or even for Israel. In fact, I've already been pushed at by the autism community in a previous advocacy mission where I used to be known as an autistic conservative, and I promoted and I even shared this post to an autism Facebook.
Thank you so much, Charlie. We really love and
Charlie.
appreciate your contribution every time. You're the best. Love you. Go ahead, Jim. Jim?
Hi, I'm sorry. I had to mute, and I am in the car. But Nicole, I just want to say thank you. You know, as an American, as a Yank, which I guess in this crowd is a little bit like saying as a Jew. I don't know. It sounds weird, but I find such clarity and strength in the writing of Brits, you and Dave Hirsch and Dave Rich, and I it's there's a message that I need help. I'm asking your help to get across here in the U.S. Because I've always felt that things are tracking in the UK maybe like 9 months ahead of what happens here, and there's certainly some differences politically and demographically. But what are some things that you might suggest or you might call attention to for people living in the United States based on what you've observed in the UK?
Well, thank you. I mean, I would say certainly when it comes to the left wing, we were tracking ahead politically, whereas on the right, I think that probably we are following what's happening in the right wing in America in terms of the rhetoric that's come out from Nick Fuentes to Candace Owens and all of that, and that's now being picked up by people on the right here, and also given a British tint because here the white people are the indigenous people. So Candace Owens, if she was here, she wouldn't be allowed to be part of their world because she's black. In terms of the left, I remember in the Corbyn era where we'd sometimes be rowing, those of us that were active in that time would be rowing with Americans, and we were trying to say, you need to see what's happening here in the left. You need to look at the whole obsession with DEI because it's not for us, the whole black, white thing. And we were basically told that's never going to happen here. So I think it has been, it seems like for many American Jews, it's been a real shock to the system. But I kind of feel that we are now all on the level pegging in that we are all in trouble, whatever country we are. I suppose in terms of the Democrats, they are heading more towards Labour territory, and Zoran Mandani is obviously extremely concerning. He's as anti-Zionist as any leader we have in this country. He's dangerous. And I suppose it goes partly back to those anti-Zionist Jews that are kosherizing these politicians. It's hard to say what advice I would give. It's just that possibly don't see Mamdani and people like that as outliers, but look at what's happened to our left-wing parties and the lack of support for Israel. And I think for me, with the America thing, that is the most pressing element for all of us who are Zionists, who want Israel to continue to exist. That is extremely worrying, both in terms of the Democrats in particular, but also the Republicans and whoever follows Trump, that they are not going to be Israel friendly. I think probably American Jews have had a very lucky time for a good amount of time, but they need to be more careful. They need to be careful who they spend their money on. They need to be careful about what message they want to put across, and possibly the message that just to kind of go back to the last question, but the message that probably all of us need to do is just to love our Judaism a bit more, love our Zionism, bring our kids up to be proud Zionists, even if we disagree with what the government in Israel is doing, but explaining why it's important that Israel exists. Because of course what we're also finding, particularly in America, but also in Britain and probably everywhere else, is that a lot of the younger people, they're imbibing a lot of the anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionism. I interviewed a student and she didn't even want me to, even though she was anonymous, for the piece that I was writing, this was about the anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism she's had at university. She didn't want me to say that she was a Zionist because she was like, that might stop me getting a job. So I suppose just overarching for all of us, I don't know whether we try and reframe Zionism or just get people to stop using that word, because really Zionism has just become a hate word. And I don't know whether as a Jewish community we are now beyond saving it, but maybe now we just say, what is the point of saying Zionist when Israel exists? And there's no other country you're calling to be dismantled. But if you want to attack people, attack either Jews or Israelis, because certainly in times of hate speech laws here, both a religion or an ethnicity such as Jews and a foreign country such as Israel, they're protected under our hate laws, our hate speech laws, but Zionism isn't. So I think possibly as a community we need to figure out what we're going to do about the word Zionism. Do we try and reclaim it, or do we just say stop using it, and learn to love ourselves and our community a bit more, and I think possibly teach our young people how to speak up for us. You know, I have tried to teach my children. They don't really ever listen to me, but my son started at university this year and he's had to deal with anti-Zionism and just plain old anti-Semitism, and he's kind of had to learn off the hop, and I've given him some advice. Doesn't like to come to his mum, of course, but he has, because he I think he does appreciate that I do know what I'm talking about. But I think that, you know, we have to educate ourselves, educate our young people so that they can speak up proudly.
Yeah. And you know, we just had a great event about anti-Zionism, because there's this approach of what should we do? Should we stop saying Zionism or not? Or we should stop calling out the hate movement that is anti-Zionism, because it's not the opposition of Zionism, it's just a hate
Yeah,
movement. And
exactly.
I think it's the greatest opportunities of all time for the Jews, because we've always been hated just for being us. And this is the first time that they're hating Zionists. So it's like it groups us with the tons of people that are
Yeah,
not Jewish, but that they are on our side. So
yeah,
it really is an opportunity to do like this huge coalition that we could never thought of doing before. But a Christian being attacked for loving Israel and a Jew being attacked for loving Israel, I mean, that's great power together. And we never had that power before.
no. Although I think we know that when they are attacking Zionists, they're not really attacking Zionists; they're attacking us. But I mean, I get that, and one of the things that I think what I would like to see my government do and other governments is to have a politician say, yeah, I'm a Zionist. What's your problem with Zionists? You know, a Zionist is a person who believes in a safe state of Israel, nothing else, nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah.
So, well, we need maybe more of our allies to say, yeah, I'm a Zionist. What's your problem?
So in Israel, we call it normalization. In the Middle East, we call it normalization, because in the 20s, the Arab League, they created this policy of anti-normalization, where everyone that does anything with an Israeli is considered punishable by law. So you could either fire them or imprison them or kill them. In Gaza, a lot of people get killed for being normalizers. So basically, the BDS is just importing this horrible policy to the West. So
Yeah,
our thing as Israeli is that we go ahead and do normalization agreements with countries. This is
yeah.
the Abraham Accord. This is
Mm.
the different kind of peace agreements that we do. It's just normalization. So can we expect to have peace with England one day and normalization with England one day? I think this is where we are now, aren't we? But it's 5:53. We have only a few minutes left before the siren starts in Israel, and we're all gonna do 1 minute of silence. We have a member here from Israel that will play the sirens for us, if you're okay with that. So that will happen in 7 minutes. In the meantime, where can people follow you, and what can we do to help you? How can we be
Thank you.
helpful?
I have started a Substack called Diary from the Diaspora. So if anyone wants to support my work, then please do support, follow, and pay, even better. Um, and I am on social media. I'm on Twitter under my name. I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook with my married name as well. So I'm Nicole Lampert Brockman on there. So my work is mainly in the Telegraph. I've got a piece in the Sun tomorrow, the Mail, the Independent, Unheard. I try and write as much as I can while still breathing. Sometimes it can get a bit overwhelming, but if you do have any stories, then please do email me. And if I don't come back to you, it's not because I'm being rude. It's just because some weeks are quite overwhelming.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's it. But yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
of course, of course. And Norman, could you please find those links and share them in the chat so everyone can follow right now? Thank you so much. And that's great. Ed, you wanted to say something more? I see that your hand is up.
Yes, can you hear me all right? You can? Yes, I bring it back on again. Hello, Nicole. Lovely to meet you. It's just very quickly, it's something that you said actually, which intertwines with what I wanted to ask you. I have a daughter herself. She's head of English in although she's not religious herself, she's a head of English in a very religious school here in Salford in Manchester. And my son's an internet designer. And they're both 30, very early 30s, well, 31 and 32, or 30, nearly 33. And their engagement with our own organisations, in particular the Rep Council here in Manchester and the likes of, well, they don't even know what the Jewish Leadership Council is. The Board of Deputies is non-existent as it is with most of her friends and her, her peers of that particular age. And I know it's a bit of a loaded question to ask you, but how do you feel that the likes of the Board of Deputies with their wonderful, lovely interfaith meetings and the Jewish Leadership Council, who nobody knows what they do, they just seem to go to meetings and have little
No idea what they do.
nobody seems to know yet. Nobody seems to say it. I mean, and they've got this huge budget, and I know they've got Gerald Ronson who financed it for all the right reasons. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, how can we get these people, to put it very, very bluntly, to get off their lovely sweet tochuses, backsides for those not Jewish, and actually do, they don't seem to be actually doing something or invigorating us to do everything. It's the likes of GPS, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I mean, we're a bunch of volunteers who do that. I've been advocating for the past 15, I just do it silently. I get up on Twitter and I found out that sarcasm, the lowest form of wit, really works best, because if you quote facts against these people, they just come back with utter rubbish. So hit them where it hurts. Like if someone puts up a comment and she's one of these really, vicious sort of BDSers, I just turn around and say, well, I'm sorry that L'Oreal thought you weren't worth it. That gets to them, So how do you feel? I know it's a loaded question to ask you about our leadership, because yes, they mean well, but.
Yeah, I think that it's all hands to deck, because I think the Board of Deputies has always been held the position that it holds, which is trying to hold together people of all different political persuasions, whilst cozying up to the government of the day, and I think they have their place. And I think organisations like Campaign Against Antisemitism have their place. GPS have their place. And while what I want is that everyone works together, whilst acknowledging that everyone is holding different places. Because I think at this point, when things are so bad, it's all hands to the deck, really. And I kind of feel that I wish that there was more. I wish there was like an overarching person who would make sure that everyone is talking to each other and not falling out with each other. But perhaps that's too much to ask when we're talking about the Jewish community, because debate is part of our culture. But yeah, I can see what the Board of Deputies lets people down, but I just think often it feels like there's no right answer here. There's no point in them falling out with the Labour government and not talking to them, and then things may be even worse. I kind of think about the Great Battle of Cable Street, which, for those who aren't British, won't maybe know, but in I think it's nearly 80 years ago, Mosley, who was the fascist, great friends with Hitler, they tried to march through Jewish areas, and for one of these marches, they were joined by the Jews were joined by the Irish dockers, the communists, and they fought back. And this was against the advice of the Board of Deputies. And so there was a famous battle. They fought back and they turned the fascists around, which is a great victory. But what happened is a week later, the fascists came, not in big numbers, but came and still attacked the Jewish shops and attacked Jewish people. So it's almost like there's no right answer. We just got to all do our bit.
As we like to quote Martin Luther King, the people who like war, the people who like peace needs to learn to organize as well as the people who like war.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
the only hope that we
Yeah.
have to have more
And
people
I think
like
we just, everyone
you.
has to use their voice. I think people are scared. People keep telling me how brave I am, but I don't really feel brave. But I think we just have to keep using our voice, and wherever we are, whether you're in your neighborhood WhatsApp and they're doing Palestine flags, or if you're, your daughter's teacher in the NEU or whatever union, we've got to keep fighting and be brave and be that. There's an image that I'm sure some of you have seen. It's like there's this huge tide of people and there's one person. It's like, yeah, I'm that person, because we are a minority, and it's when we're fighting that we see how much of a minority we are.
Thank you
But
so much.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
that's
This
okay.
is the time for 1 minute of silence. Everyone, please stand up. We're gonna be quiet together for a minute. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole, for being with us today. This was amazing,
Okay.
and I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to doing more things together.
Cool.
Everyone that's here for the focus on Berlin, please stay, and we're gonna move on to Shy now. Thank you so much, Nicole. Really,
Okay.
really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. You're the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you very much.
Really, thank
Thank-
you, Leslie, also for bringing Nicole to us. This was it's delightful, really, to meet people like that and
Thank you. Bye
to be
bye.
able to talk to you. It's really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, we have Berlin focus now. I'm just wondering if there's a mistake. And I think we have a different link for the Berlin. That's a mistake, I think. Let's see. Oh, wow. There's a registration form.
You're still recording, Nick, if that.
That seems to be the least of the problem right now.